I was working as like a junior art director, and I had these bright colors. It was 16 magazine for Safeguard soap. I had another guy do it, and he just made all the colors pastel. And the art director I'm working over, he says, "You got to take that back to Pushpin Studios." So I walk in, and who am I talking to but Milton Glaser, who is the master graphic guy in the world. And I'm telling him, we have to change this. And he's going, "Oh, we decided it looked better this way." And I said, because I had to, I said, "Well, no, we're going to have to change this to brighter colors." So that was my high point, and I got to tell Milton Glaser what to do.
Yeah, it's got to be weird when your signature starts demanding money. You can sign your name
this
and
is the first time I've heard it.
Yeah, well, on your books, if you sign your book.
Well, that's true, yeah, and lithographs.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, in fact, we have this for all those people.
On straight.
Oh yeah, well, we're doing it live.
Oh, we are.
For all those people who want to see things that get signed, this is one of Ed's pieces. We'll talk about that later. That was a National Lampoon for those people who are just listening.
You dug that out of somewhere.
So Pat, who does the podcast, he's a fan of yours.
Oh, okay.
He bought it on eBay. I won't say how much, and said, "You think Ed would sign it?" And I said, "Maybe. We'll ask him."
Sure, $50.
$50. See, there you go. Your signature demands $50. In fact, I think it actually only demands $25 on your books. I think that it's about, maybe it's gone up.
Okay. Well, okay, 25.
25 for Pat. Well, I have Ed Mell on my podcast. I don't know how long I've been trying to get you on this podcast, but it's over 2 years.
Probably since you first started it.
Yeah, probably so. I'm thinking about how many people have mentioned your name on this podcast, but you're the great white whale because...
you better tell me so I can mention theirs too.
Yeah, well, let's see, Collier and Bob Bosbell, I think Mark Maggiore, Billy Schenck, Ballinger... Gary Ernest Smith. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Right.
Yeah. So it's funny. You kind of are in the crux of a lot of lives.
Well, I've been at this a long time.
You have been at this a long time.
And I didn't start that young. I didn't start really till I was about 36. So.
With the painting part.
With the painting part, yes.
Yeah, let's talk about that, the beginning, the Ed Mell beginning, because one of the things I think that makes you unique is that you're a real Arizonian.
Right.
Born and raised, went to high school in Arizona and all that. So tell me a little bit about your mom and dad, because I know a little bit about the back history, but they got to Arizona early, right? 1915 and 1924 or something like that?
My mother moved to Mesa, Arizona with her family when she was 1 in 1915. My dad came in 1924. His father got tuberculosis. His father was the head of... my grandfather was the head of Mazda light bulb division at General Electric. He was production manager. Mm-hmm. And when he got sick with, what the hell? I can't
TB, remember. Probably.
TB, yes. Yeah. They sent him to, the president had a place in Chandler and sent him there to recuperate. And after he was feeling better, he sent for his family and decided to stay here.
And did your grandfather stay in that business, in the automotive business?
No, well, Mazda light bulb.
Oh, light bulbs. Okay, yeah, Mazda Electric probably didn't exist. Yeah,
they didn't. And but he didn't stay in that. Then he was assistant treasurer for the Arizona Power Company, which is now APS. And he invested a lot in land early on and did very, very well for himself. Yeah.
And your dad was how old when he came to
12 years old.
He was 12. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That must have been a switch.
Yeah, and he said when he got off the train, he immediately fell in love with Arizona.
Yeah. Well, when you think about Arizona and that
Phoenix
time frame,
was 25,000 people or something.
Yeah,
like that.
That sounds about right.
So.
Yeah, we weren't even that many. We were like 25,000 in 1950 in Tucson.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was Phoenix was big comparatively.
Right, exactly.
So your dad, what did your dad do?
My dad, well, he was editor of the Arizona Beverage Journal, which is a liquor trade magazine, and And then later on, he was executive secretary of the Arizona Wholesale Beer and Liquor Association. So he kind of dealt with all kinds of legal things with that came up about liquor control and that kind of thing, and also, put together conventions they'd have every year.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys had a good party, that's for sure.
I bet they did. And did your mom, did she work, or did she?
She was a school teacher.
She was.
And then when we came around, she became substitute teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what did she teach?
She taught first through third grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The critical time frame, really.
Yeah, really.
And did she like art?
My family was very open to it. My older brother, Frank, was kind of the first artist in the family. And he had more natural talent than any of us, I think. And he sent stuff to Mad Magazine to see when he was 16 years old,
Yeah.
that kind of work and stuff.
Did they put any of his stuff in Mad Magazine?
No, he was just seeing if they would hire him,
Oh, wow. He knew what he wanted to do.
He was 16.
Right.
And then later on, he went to Art Center, as I did, and went to New York, worked in advertising, and like I did, and also went into illustration, as I did. So.
And then your younger brother also was an artist, right?
Yeah, he was. He worked he went to San Francisco Art Institute. He was going with a couple of the members of the Tubes, a rock group called the Tubes,
mm-hmm.
and was involved with their early set designs and stuff, and that kind of thing.
So what were your parents thinking when they, you got 3 kids that are all wanting to go into art? Were they pro for that?
Well, they were definitely, in my case, they were glad I found something to do.
Okay, let's go there then. Were you a bad kid when you were growing up?
I was dyslexic, so I had a lot of trouble in school. It affects your memory more than anything, like memorizing, chapters in a book,
right,
and that kind of thing. And so I didn't do very well in tests, which is not an indication of your intelligence. It's just part of you isn't working.
Yeah, because they don't test. The thing is, they're not testing for artistic creativity and what you can do in that area.
Right.
Because they still don't value it like they should.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Music and art are so important, I think, to people, even if that's not their vocation. I think it just helps in the rest of it all.
I mean, can you imagine if they didn't, if without your parents pushing you and saying that's fine and you having the self-drive, otherwise you don't find art maybe, you know?
That's right, yeah.
And that, can you imagine? That's
so my grandfather used to give us a ream of paper, which was like, regular typing paper, and art supplies every year. So he was, always, I guess he was helping us out. He didn't talk much about it, but he did give us that for some reason or other. So.
Well, he's old school. Would he been in World War?
He was not in World War I. He probably would have been. It's interesting. He was kicked out of every Catholic school in Minneapolis. and I don't think he went past an 8th grade education, but he was running the production for a major light bulb company. So he had his smart, and was an assistant treasurer for a power company. So
yeah, no, he clearly succeeded.
Takes some knowledge there. So.
And then what about your dad? Was he in World War II at all?
He was World War II. He was stationed in Italy. He was a clerk because they said he was so blind if he got his glasses knocked off, he'd be shooting his own men. So it kept him out of the front lines, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah. I'm sure. We are too, as a matter of fact. So you're growing up with an older brother, a younger brother. Everybody's interested in art, but you were really interested also in cars, right?
Yeah, early on, that's what I drew, is cars, and my dream was to be a car designer. And so when I went to art, that changed. I went to junior college And I had a friend, Mel Abert. He and I were kind of equal talents in junior college artistically. And then he went on to Art Center a few semesters ahead of me and came back with his portfolio, and he laid it out on my parents' living room floor. And I was blown away by how far he'd exceeded
right.
my abilities, let's say. So, and my dad was sitting there, and he said, you want to go to Art Center? And I said, yeah. So I had to put together a portfolio. You had to have a portfolio to get in.
Good school.
So I set up a little art studio in my parents' garage, and pumped it out and went over there, and it got accepted. And so that was a great change in my life. Phoenix was kind of backward in those days.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And LA was happening, and there was so just moving to that environment and that school and everything. Just, I always felt you learned as much from your new friends as you did from the teachers, because some of them were hipper than me for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Well, when you were in school, and like high school and junior high, did you ever win any awards, art awards or anything?
No, I never entered anything.
Yeah, you were just focused on drawing cars.
Drawing cars and getting in trouble.
Yeah, and then when you got your degree at the junior college, what was that in?
It was just what are they? I can't remember. What
like a general thing.
General.
Yeah, you were still searching.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think junior college is good if you don't have a direction.
Yeah.
Because you're not wasting a lot of money. The pressure isn't too hard on you. It's like high school without the boundaries, so to speak. And it gave me a chance to kind of figure out what I wanted to get a rough direction. And then through my meeting with Mel Abert, I ended up going to art school.
And did he graduate with you from high school?
He did, and he also graduated from Art Center. He graduated a couple semesters before me.
Yeah.
And he went on to be a third owner in the largest ad agency in California, privately owned.
Wow.
It wasn't a part of a conglomerate.
Yeah.
So, and he stayed in advertising until very recently.
He's still around?
Yeah. He just moved to Montana to paint.
Let's give him a shout out. Well, in a way, he was instrumental in you going to Art Center, right?
He was, very much so, yeah. Because I went over there and checked it out and hung out with him and the guys and sat in on a couple of classes. And so it was mind-blowing for a 20-year-old kid from Phoenix.
And this would have been about 62 or so?
Yeah, and I went there in 63.
Yeah. So how long was your hair in 63?
It was very short.
Yeah, I would think.
It was because that was the trend.
Right, yeah, you're in Arizona. Yeah, that's exactly right. But I bet it wasn't short when you got out.
Well, Art Center did not allow you to grow your hair long.
Oh, wow.
And being an art school, that was pretty weird. But you got to remember the number one curriculum was automotive design. And so Ford, Chrysler, and GM all donated probably $1 million a year to the school because it was the top automotive design school. So when they came to town, they didn't want a bunch of scruffy, long-haired weirdos. And of course, long hair didn't come in until 66.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I graduated in 67. But.
And so when you're in art school, Art Center Design, were you interested in doing automotive stuff still? Was there a track for that or not?
I wasn't interested, although I kind of vicariously enjoyed it through friends of mine that were into that. So.
And some pretty famous people have gone through that college, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You remember any of the top people besides yourself?
Well, there was a lot of top automotive designers.
Well, there were some great artists too. There's been some great artists that have gone through that
I'm having trouble
program. Yeah, I'm trying to think. The director and who did The Big Orange and we all have it.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of strong talent came.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah,
in the advertising world, and And the teachers were more, a lot of them were working professionals, which I think gave us a better insight to it all. It was good.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I was ready to move on.
And so by the time you graduate in 67, what are you thinking at that point? New York?
New York.
Yeah.
If you're advertising, it seemed like everything was a compromise if you didn't go to New York,
right.
Which isn't really the truth, but that's what we thought.
But and it was kind of true, right? I mean, that's where they were all headed.
Well, when I was probably in my third year, a friend of mine, Nick Gaetano, was already working at Young and Rubicam, which at that time was the second largest ad agency in the world. And he got, through his influence, got me a summer student's job as an art director, a junior art director. So that was definitely great.
And so did you go there where you're still in school, like 66 or so?
Yeah.
That was
65.
So 65. 2 years before. So you already knew, you kind of got to see the Big Apple and see what it was all about, right?
Yeah, it was, I did. And I designed an ad. I was working as a junior art director.
Right.
For this guy, Mats Yasamura, a great guy. And he let me do an ad for 16 magazine. And I said, I wanted illustrated. And he said, by who? And I said, Paul Davis, who was a Pushpin studio artist. Now, he had a job that went down in an airplane. So he had to cancel on the job. And they got another guy to do it. And I had these bright colors. It was 16 magazine for Safeguard soap, I think. And anyway, he had another guy do it, and he just made all the colors pastel. And the art director I'm working over, he says, you got to take that back to Pushpin Studios and tell them they'll redo it. So I walk in, and who am I talking to but Milton Glaser, who is the master graphic guy in the world. And I'm telling him, we have to change this. And he's going, we decided it looked better this way. And I said, because I had to. I said, well, no, we're going to have to change this to brighter colors.
Right.
And then I don't think that ever happened, but, for some reason or other. But that was my high point. And I got to tell Milton Glaser what to do.
And you're like 22 maybe or something?
Yeah, 23.
23. Yeah. And so when you were in New York that first go around as an intern, were you going to any of the art museums? Because there's not a lot of art to see in Phoenix in that time frame.
Well, to a degree, but my interest was more in the commercial world.
You were working.
I mean, Museum of Modern Art was a must, and the Whitney.
Right.
And the Met probably did those, yeah.
And the pop scene really hadn't quite come on at that point, had it?
No.
Yeah.
It hadn't.
Yeah. So you go back, you finish up, and then you go, okay, I know where I'm going. And you had an in with this advertising.
I did. Well, I did submit more of a straightforward advertising portfolio, and they liked the cute crap that I had in my first one. And so I didn't get a job at Y&R. I was really bummed. But I got one at Kenyon and Eckhart, which was really a good agency. And I worked on Helena Rubinstein and Air France. And I got to design an ad campaign for Air France cargo lines, which was called Pelican Lines. And so that was fun. But I kind of lost interest in it. And I did a guy bombed on an illustration job for Air France. And I can't remember if he didn't turn it in or what happened, but they said, Ed, could you go home and do an illustration overnight for this? We've seen the stuff you've been fiddling around with. So I did, and it was a coupon campaign. And of all the pieces, they had more coupons clipped on. And they were really thrilled with it. And I thought, I could do this for a living. I wouldn't have to answer to anybody. So a friend of mine, Skip Andrews, another Phoenician, was out in L.A. doing some illustration with another friend of ours. And I called him. I said, I think I'm going to come to L.A. And he goes, oh, L.A.'s dead. I'm coming to New York. So he came to New York. and we formed Sagebrush Studios, a little reflection on our Western heritage
Right.
there.
Who came up with the name? Do you remember?
Can't remember.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. You went with an Arizona name.
Yeah. Well, it's a brush, you know. So the first things we were doing was our illustration was airbrush, which was kind of fresh to the scene. There was one other illustrator in New York named Robert Grossman that was doing contemporary airbrush illustration. And he was really good. And none of the other illustrators were using it. And so it had a fresh new look that all of the art directors liked and stuff. So,
And for people who might not know what airbrush is, can you explain what that is?
well, it's you're spraying your color on. So you put down a frisket and cut out the different shapes and peel them off and spray the colors, put them back. I mean, it's a tedious job.
And very flat.
Yeah, very flat. But you can put dimension to it by, the way you spray it. But anyway, so we did that, and it was, I really did enjoy it for a while. But again, it wasn't really what I was feeling. And I had a friend, John Cordalis, who was a musician and a teacher, and he got a job teaching on the Hopi Reservation in northern Arizona. And he called me up and said, we're putting together a summer arts program for the kids and the adults. And how would you like to come spend 2.5 months on the Hopi Reservation? I said,
Right.
I said, if you can cover my rent, which is nothing, I'll be there. And so that was really probably the most important thing I've done in my life, was to just walk away from New York City for 2.5 months and be on a reservation that everything about it was fresh and new and exciting. The landscape was. And so that's when my early thoughts about what I'm doing today sort of started gelling.
Yeah, why do you think you did that? Why did you take that job?
Because I just wanted to get out of there for a while, and it sounded exciting and different,
Had you been back to Arizona hardly, in that period of time?
To Phoenix, but I'd never been up to the Hopi Reservation in my life. So, and the people were great, and it was the whole working at that school was a lot of fun. My friend, he had taught, there's 3 Hopi guys that he taught how to play instruments, and there was 2 white guys, so they had a band called the Indians and Cowboys. And anyway, there was just a lot of fun going on there. And he had taken the original adobe school building that had been abandoned and just used for storage, and had all the adults in the village restore it. And then he got these smaller grants that other schools didn't go for. And he ended up with $25,000 of money to buy art supplies and stuff. So they had great art supplies.
This was at Hope Villa?
This is at Hope Villa, yeah. And the kids would just run to the classes. They were excited. And, it was fun. And there was a lot of really good talent there, too.
Yeah, I believe it.
Because art is part of their culture,
Yes.
And so...
That's like 71?
That was 71, yeah.
And do you know if any of those kids that you taught, I assume you were teaching art, you were teaching drawing and different things, right? Did any of them go on to become artists of any type? Do you know?
I don't know.
It'd be really interesting to know if any of them did.
You kind of lost track of them,
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun.
And so going back to New York just for a little bit, because there's a few things I want to capture, like 69 was Woodstock, and you were in New York. Did you know about that or want to go to that? Or
we went to Woodstock.
Okay, see,
my brother got tickets for us all, and he had a camper on the back of his truck, and we all piled in there. And we got within 7 miles of and the humanity was just ridiculous, and so we paid a guy to park in his front yard, and we we never even made it to the stage. It was just too many people, and we all decided, let's get the heck out of here. And so we went and camped on Delaware River and had a great time.
Yeah.
And looking at those movies, I'm so glad I wasn't part of that mess.
But your hair was probably a little longer by then.
It was, yes.
And so that was Vietnam time as well, and you're not in school. So how did that go down with Vietnam?
Well, I went to I got a college deferment when I went to Art Center,
Right.
and then by then, my numbers were that I didn't get called in.
You had a high number.
Yeah, high number.
Yeah, and none of your brothers did either.
No, Lee was too young, and my brother Frank, he enlisted when he was 21 and was in Germany. So nobody was in. Yeah, nobody saw combat.
Nobody saw combat, at least like that combat for sure. And then but also in New York City, you did stuff like this. So we were kind of alluding to it. And I'd like to bring up one of your major works that you did. So for those on YouTube, we get to see that. This is looks like Minnie Mouse with...
she's burying her boobies with little flower pasties.
Yeah, she does. It says sagebrush right there at the bottom of the thing. So how did that happen?
Well, we'd done some other work for National Lampoon, and they said, we want you to do Minnie doing in this position. And so the first one we did, we said, they're going to get sued. So we tried to change her enough, took it in. They said, we want dead on 40s Minnie Mouse, redo it. So we redid it, and of course they got sued.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until reading an Esquire article, I think it was Henry Beard or one of the guys from there, that they said, he talked about this, that it was intentional to get sued by Disney because they only got sued for $10,000. And the magazine was struggling, and supposedly this cover saved the magazine.
Did you worry about yourself getting sued when you did it?
No, we were too dumb.
Yeah, you didn't. He was like, we'll do whatever they say.
We got $150 for the cover.
Now, if you sign it, you get $50 for it. That's pretty funny. So you, but after Hope Villa in 71, and that was 2 months out on the res?
2.5, yeah.
2.5 months. So you go back to New York.
Right.
And then what happened then?
I went back to New York and worked for a while and started making sort of plans to move back to Arizona, and actually I was thinking about moving to San Francisco with my younger brother and doing a design studio. Mm-hmm. So I went there for 3 weeks just to see how I liked it. It rained every day, and I said, I can't do it.
I need heat and I need sun.
And in space.
Yeah, in space, yeah. No, that's totally different.
Yeah, because it's another city,
Yeah.
So I moved back to Phoenix, and I still was doing illustration to make a living. My brother, my brother Lee and I, and my brother Frank at times did some etched glass stuff to make a living,
Right.
It was kind of in vogue in the early...
Have you seen any of that ever come back around that you guys did? Any of that glass work?
There's one at the La Fonda in Taos. It's still there. Even it was for a restaurant.
Yeah.
In the hotel.
Oh, that's so funny.
But it was closed, but the glass is still there. But that's about it.
And so this is like 73 kind of time frame now?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And have you started considering to do some fine art yet?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of drawing and thinking, and then, how it is. It just one day it's like, okay, I kind of know in my head before I even put anything down what I wanted to do. And my early paintings were very minimal, and
right.
They were sort of a modernist approach to the landscape, very minimal. And then more and more I started adding more information on them. And then I evolved from that almost to my version of realism. And then I started going back to the modernist stuff too.
Yeah, no, I know.
Reinvestigating.
It's really an interesting way, because if you look at those early ones, and you're talking your earliest paintings, would they really be like 77?
Yeah.
Right in there with the two mountain kind of thing.
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks, yeah, that's right. And then
which was my first oil.
Yeah, and that was 1977?
Yeah, and I'd been doing some acrylics and stuff, but
Was that was oil, though, right?
that was oil,
Yeah.
yes.
And so, when you did that painting, which is a big painting, it's not a small painting, right?
It's 1530, I think, something like that.
When you started doing those kind of things, did you go, I got something here?
Yeah, I felt like I had a road to go down.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things is the more you evolve into it, I started adding more information. And ironically, I wanted to do a painting for my parents for Christmas, and I go, I got to put a little more in there for them.
Because they won't get it, you think?
They might not appreciate it.
Right, exactly. You did what? This is the school we paid for?
Right. And so it was still very minimal and modern. And by doing that, it opened up, you know, I need to put more information in there to keep my interest,
right,
as well as anything else. And then you just start going down a road, and the landscape, you can't ask for better landscape than in the Southwest. The color, the variety of form, everything is so great. So I've always said an artist has to keep himself entertained. If he's bored with his work, it shows. So
yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
And yours never has been that way. I'm always amazed how fresh it is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
You know, and you're continuing to evolve and rehash things. And you know, I find it amazing that in 1977, you're doing this very simplistic, modern, cubistic kind of sensibility, and it all comes back around.
Yeah.
You know, 35 years later.
Well, it was probably more like 10 years later.
Yeah.
And then I went, and I still paint both schools.
Yeah, right.
Which I think doing realism, the understanding of realism helps you abstract it. I think, you know, I mean, Picasso was very good in a realistic approach, and he understood there's certain forms logged in your brain that you draw from all
right.
that, I think, in colors and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember you telling me one time in your studio, we're talking about, I think I asked the question, is it easier to do the abstraction stuff? And you said, nope, just as hard, just as much time frame, I should say.
It's, to me, it's more freeform thinking, because they all start out as a small study where I because some of the inventions are not worth developing.
Yeah. Those are the ones I sell.
You know, the other day I did a painting. It was a crappy painting kicking around. And I only had a couple hours to paint before I had to leave. So I just repainted over the thing, and it came out great. So sometimes I would say great, it came out good enough.
Yeah, didn't get scraped.
Right. And enough that I'm going to develop it into a bigger painting.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a real thing.
You know, and so that's the way Picasso worked too. He would redo things and reinvent them 3 or 4 times. And you know, it's funny, when I'm doing the abstracts, a lot of times I have a very vague general idea, and sometimes I have no idea what I'm going to do at all. But I put some marks down that sort of indicate something to me, you know, and sort of start following that and see where it takes me.
And this is on a smaller painting, or?
Yeah, this is studies.
Yeah,
which are
10, 14, whatever.
Yeah, roughly 11, 14.
Yeah.
You know, smaller even than that, sometimes a little bigger.
And so you just put a couple little marks and go,
yeah.
Okay, let's see where it goes.
Put some color down. And a lot of times you go, I can already tell it's going to be a bomb, you know. And then you just keep messing with it. And to me, that's the way I find some new stuff.
Yeah.
Is kind of breaking your own rules. And, you know, when your brain says, oh, you should make that brown and over here. And so you make it purple and put it over here or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, the Pueblo potters do the same thing.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of Pueblo potters. They don't really know what the form is. Mm-hmm. They just start working, and then it just kind of starts making shape, and they go, that's what it is, and I go there.
Right. Yeah, it's probably the same. You know, when we were kids, my brother and I used to do things where we'd make a scribble, and then the other guy would have to make a face out of it or something.
Right.
You know? And it's kind of almost using that same thinking on a different level.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know, where it's free form. It's, you know, you haven't got the thing already charted out. And that's part of my painting. And then there's some things that are very figured out.
Yeah.
You know, I might go through a series of drawings and a couple of studies before I do a finish. So.
And on the more, I call it more traditional, more realistic stuff, is it the same thing that you don't have exactly the idea, or is that more?
That one I have more of an idea.
Yeah, I would think you'd have to.
Yeah.
And that's where film and photos and things come in handy, or more involved.
Sometimes, yes. Yeah. And again, they do sort of invent themselves as you're doing it, and then like I like, if I'm doing a really big piece, I'll do 2 or maybe even 3 studies to get it refined, because once you're painting big, you want to have it pretty clear in your mind what you're doing.
Right.
At least I do, you know. I mean, some guys don't, they just do them, you know. So we all work different. That's why our work looks different.
And you've kept a lot of the studies, a lot of the ones that
I have, yes.
Yeah, I know.
And I've sold a lot too.
Yeah, I've got a few of them in my own collection that you were kind enough to let us buy and keep in our own collection. But those are hard to get out of you, I know.
Well, I put a few in every show.
Yeah, in fact, we'll have a show in February.
That's right.
I think we've been showing together for almost like 25 years.
Well, I think, how long have you been in business?
Since 92. And I think we first started showing together maybe about 98.
Oh, I thought it was earlier than that.
Could be 96. I was trying to think of that the other day. It was somewhere between 96 and 98. It may have been 96.
Yeah.
But it's whatever that period of time is, it's like a quarter of a century.
Right.
I know that. And so let's get back to the gallery kind of thing. So we'll get to where I come in. But in 77, you start painting, you start doing oils, and you must at some point go, okay, I've got to get a gallery or galleries.
Right. I had 2 little boys that I had to feed.
Right.
So, I started in a gallery on Main Street that I helped form. I met a guy who says, I want to do a gallery and I don't have any money. And I met a woman that said, I have some money, I want to do a gallery, but I don't know, and put them together. And it was called Limner Gallery.
I've heard of that.
And Limner Gallery, Limner is another name for a painter. So we thought, and it sounds like somebody's name.
It does, yes.
So we called it Limner Gallery. And I was there for, I think they were, and Bill Shank was in that. It was really early when we were just.
Yeah, what would this have been, like 78?
5. That's a good question.
Yeah, but somewhere in the early, mid to late 70s.
I was doing airbrush on canvas.
Oh, yeah, it was early.
So it was very early.
Yeah.
It was before I started understanding that the tactile quality of painting is important.
Right.
So I threw my airbrush against the wall at one point because they clog. It was just they look great, but they were anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was in that gallery with Bill Shank was there. That's about the only person I can. So it was funny. First show at the gallery, we all had our stuff there, and Phil Curtis, who's a well-known painter from Phoenix. Came in and I was introduced to him and he said, what's your paintings? And I said, oh, those 2 up there, And he goes, looks at him, he goes, I know what your problem is. You can do too many things well. And he left and I went, what does he mean?
Yeah.
But I think he meant that I was a technician, which I kind of was. I just doing kind of soft focus photorealism and stuff. So, it took me a while to figure out what he meant, but it was an important thing for him to say. And so that gallery closed, and then there was one called Elizabeth Burns Gallery, And she was open for a couple of years, and then Marilyn Butler bought it. It was a very small gallery, and it handled Fritz Scholder and a guy named Earl Linderman, who were, both major hot guys right then.
Yep.
So I was kind of stuck in the back room a lot, So
they must have had good taste, though, because she had Fritz Scholder.
Oh, she did, yeah, But people were going, oh, we're not seeing Ed Mell. They'd drag something out of the back room, So I thought, well, it's time to move on. So I actually made a few appointments with Elaine Horwich, but
right.
she never showed up or called me. So, she was in Santa Fe. It was in the summer, and I understand. And in the meantime, Suzanne Brown got word that I was looking, and I thought I was keeping it a big secret.
And they used to work together, I think, right? Brown and Elaine Horowitz. They
had something called the Art Wagon in the early days.
Yeah. So at this point, they're kind of competitors, right?
They were.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said to Suzanne, your contract, I can't sign a contract like that. She said, you don't need to sign a contract. And she said, I'll give you a show whenever you want. So I had, I put together a show almost when I would have had one across the street. And it was I was starting to really hit my stride more, and it really did well. And
what year would this have been?
Oh, I joined her in 81.
81. So because you had a show in like Amarillo, was it, or Lubbock?
I did have one in Amarillo.
It was Amarillo in 1980, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And that was one of your very first, maybe your first major kind of show?
Yeah, and that was in a guy's house.
Yeah, but you did very well, right?
Yeah, well, for those times, I came home with some money.
Yeah, because I ended up with a couple of those paintings from people out of that.
Oh, did you?
I have, yeah,
Interesting.
And they were great. They were great paintings.
Yeah, it was a learning experience. I can't remember my friend, when a mic's in front of me, I can't think.
Yeah, no. I can't think when the mic is or isn't in front of me sometimes. But one of your good friends had set it up.
David Notter's wife, she is from Amarillo, and she set this whole thing up. So we go there, and there's this big, beautiful home, kind of Santa Fe style. And the guy that owned it became a senator in Texas. And again, it escapes me. But
right.
So we went in to hang my show in their house. And I had to take down a Picasso and a Cézanne, the real deal.
Right.
And they hired a guard that stood by the closet that they were in.
The expensive stuff.
Yeah. But they had a big crowd of people, and people bought stuff, and it was wonderful. So. And
you did great stuff. I mean, there was some really. I know the two pieces I got out of that that have been in that show were wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you still have them?
No.
Yeah. I'm curious what they were, because I hardly remember.
I can show you. I actually know where one of them is, and it's in one of my good friends' collection, and I know the other one. Yeah. They were fantastic paintings. Yeah, very typical of that kind of time frame. I mean, more simple. Yeah. And I think you were using at that point the Ed Mell block kind of a signature. Do you remember when you quit using that?
Well, Marilyn Butler said you better develop a signature. So I thought that was a good idea, because it's a lot easier to sign than it is to hand letter.
Right, Ed Mell. Yeah. So that would have been, if she's doing that, that's like maybe 79. You started, because 80 they still had the Ed Mell. I think those things still had the early block.
It was probably right in there when I changed, because I was in Suzanne Brown in 81.
Yes.
And I was with her for 20 years.
Yes. So there's the tidbit of the Ed Mell aficionados out there. If it's the block letter Ed Mell signature, it's probably 1980 or before.
Yeah.
It's only a short period of time, really, maybe 3 years worth of art that has that.
Exactly.
So you end up with Suzanne. She says, I'll do whatever, just, come with me, don't go with.
And I had a good, actually, Elaine Horwich was never mentioned in the conversation.
Yeah.
She just, I mean, she said, I really want you. And I figured, Elaine Horwich was a hipper gallery.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be in that environment. But Suze Brown, there's something to be said for a gallery that really wants you.
Yes.
And they'll treat you right. And we did a lot of good business for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. When I started showing you in whatever it was, I'll say 96, somewhere in that time frame. I'll have to actually look it up. And Suzanne Brown came down to meet me. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
I think you did tell me, but she didn't want me to be in another gallery in Arizona.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Howard Post is down there.
Right, exactly.
If he can do it, I can do it.
Exactly.
So I just did it.
Yeah. Because Howard was in Suzanne Brown's as well.
Right. He paved the way for me.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And and so she came down, and I think she just wanted to size me up, first of all, to see if I would be too much competition.
Right.
Which makes sense, I guess. And two, probably just to make sure I was an okay guy, and just not going to screw up your world or her world.
Early career.
Yeah, exactly. Because a dealer can screw things up for people if they do things.
I've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate. So in 81, a Dewey Coffin Gallery approached me.
That's in Santa Fe.
Yeah, and Ray came over, and he was such a great guy.
He is a great guy.
Yeah, anyway. As soon as I talked to him, I knew I wanted it. And he had pictures of his new gallery on the plaza, and I said, "Oh yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with you." So we were together. It's evolved from Dewey Coffin to Dewey Galleries to Owens Dewey, and now I'm with Owens. So it's that involvement I've stayed with all this time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And they did at least one show. Was one of their first shows was like Ed Mell, Maynard Dixon kind of thing, right?
It was. That was right when Owens Dewey was happening. People were comparing my work to his, and I always felt that you deal with it straight on. Of course he influenced me, And so we did a catalog and everything that, for that show. And I thought it clears the air, so to speak.
Right.
It's not, he influenced me, but I think all artists are a continuum.
Yeah, of course.
There's not a guy on the planet that isn't influenced by somebody.
Yeah, well, you also like Long Mogargy, you like Blumenschein, you like some of the early Mexican artists. I mean, those are all...
Yeah, a lot of the Taos founders.
Yeah. I mean, all those...
Victor Higgins.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Andrew
I think...
Dosberg.
You know what? I think the comparison, why people see this Dixon-Mell comparison is that I think people say they both captured the West with truth, and when you look at those, you go, and not a lot of people do, and both of you guys really captured it with an essence of getting whatever that is, whether it's the shadows and the colors and the forms and the clouds. I mean, it used to be Dixon clouds, Dixon sunset. Now it's Mell sunset. I don't ever hear the word Dixon anymore. I only hear it's a Mell sunset. It's a Mell sunset.
Oh, he's not around. It didn't bother him.
I wonder if he heard that when he was alive. I bet he did.
Probably so. But, he was a different time. The populists weren't so aware of artists like they are now, because of the media and everything like that. So I had a cover of Southwest Art in 1981 or two.
Yeah, I own that painting.
Oh, yes, you
No,
do?
I don't. I own the one that's on the cover of Arizona Highways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's right. And Don Haggerty saw the article, and who did the Dixon book.
Yes.
And was friends with Edith Hamlin. And gave me a call, and we became good friends. And of course, he wrote my book in '97. So he said, so I'd been hanging out with Jerry Foster, who was a helicopter pilot for Channel 12.
That's a big component of what you do.
It really is. I mean, especially back then, And I've got so much reference that I once in a while go and look, see if there's anything I missed.
Right.
The thrill of those trips were amazing. I mean, Jerry was a spirited flyer, and we had some amazing trips.
Was he a combat guy? Do you know?
He taught. I think he taught military helicopter.
I see. Yeah. So he was this helicopter guy who you got an invitation to go up.
Right. I met Tom Gruzinski was a photographer, and we were mutual friend. How am I trying to say that? Anyway, Tom was a good friend of Jerry's. And so he brought Jerry over to my place once, and he saw what I was doing painting-wise, and I casually dropped a hint. What a great perspective for an artist.
Boy, I'd like to see that someday.
So he called me up and he goes, okay, pack lightly, meet me on top of Channel 12 at 6 a.m, and we're packed for, I think, 4 days or something like that. So the first day in a helicopter, other than when I was living in New York, my ad agency was in the there again, it's an airline.
Yeah.
Pan Am.
Yeah.
It was a Pan Am building. So I'd go to work, I'd take my suitcase, I'd go up on the roof, catch a helicopter, and, I felt like a real modern guy.
Oh, yeah, you are. Hot shot, actually.
Anyway, so that's the only time I'd been in a helicopter, mind you. And this is a little Hughes 500D. It's a jet helicopter. Very capable. They're really a sports car of helicopters back then, I think. And so I meet him and Tom and the cameraman, because they did these trips. They did video for little pieces and a half-hour piece on every trip. And so, the first day we land on some rocks at Sedona, went clear to the top of San Francisco Peaks.
Yeah, which is like 13,000 feet or something.
It's 12,600.
Yeah.
The ceiling of a helicopter is about 13.
Yeah.
So later on, Jerry admitted getting it back up in the air was a little difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I remember we just kind of went up and
fell off.
Down,
Oh, God.
So, and then I remember we flew and we landed at two Gray Hills trading posts.
Yes.
And we walked in and the owner goes, I like the way you boys dropped in here. and then we went to the Grand Canyon when you could still fly in the canyon.
Right.
I mean, and we're treetop level, and all of a sudden it just opens up and just you drop into the thing.
Wow.
It was. There was more than one time I thought I was going to die.
Well, one time didn't you end up on top of some kind of a bluff, and the lightning bolts were all going everywhere?
Don Haggerty was on that trip. We had 3 helicopters because there was always at least two on a trip. This time we had 3. And we landed on top of Gunsight Butte at Lake Powell. And it had kind of a stormy, maybe a good sunset was starting, and the cameraman was all set up. And I got out of Jerry's helicopter, and I said, and it was making a buzzing noise. I said, did you forget to turn something off? He goes, no, I didn't. And then all the helicopters were buzzing.
Oh, God.
And that's when I had long but thinning hair.
Yes.
Somebody saw a spark go down the boom of a helicopter, and they looked at me, and my hair was standing on end.
Oh, my God.
And that's a negative charge, meaning lightning could happen, which we never saw. But I've never seen 3 helicopters get off the top of that as quick.
Can you imagine?
That was a little frightening.
Yeah.
Hair-raising, you might say.
Yeah, completely. Couldn't do it now.
Right.
So when you're doing those helicopter perspectives, it must change your art, right?
Well, it changed some of it for sure.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times we were flying at real low levels. But there were, I did a painting of 3 sisters. It was,
right.
It was was a perspective, helicopter perspective.
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting paintings, actually, because of the way it's like eye level with it, and you never see Three Sisters in Monument Valley like that. So it's always from below.
Right, exactly. So it was, anyway, yeah, it was exciting. And I mean, and I would come back and I'd have all this great reference because I had motor drives. One time I had 2 cameras with motor drives. I'd be shooting out of windows, not even knowing what the hell I was getting. And you get back and you go, oh, God, I didn't even see that.
And you still use those occasionally for reference?
On occasion, yeah. And I still do trips up there and stuff,
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people don't realize that you also do plein air painting. There are times that you will go out, especially with you and Gary Ernest Smith.
Gary Ernest Smith and I and Larry Clarkson.
Yeah, Larry Clarkson.
We used to do that more often than we do now. But those were fun, and mostly in Utah. Although we did Arizona once, and I took them through Karcher Caverns with the Parks Department head.
Another thing that you did, we might as well mention that while you're here on Karcher Caverns, because you did the big Kugelakon that's in the park, right? How'd you get that deal? We need your support for the Medicine Man Gallery channel, so make sure to click the subscribe button and tap the little bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, which we do every morning on Wednesday and Friday. See you soon.